Do your thumbnails look something like this? Do you want them to look more like this? Today, we're going to go over how to create thumbnails like this by creating this exact thumbnail. Before even opening Rocket League or Photoshop, we need to start planning for what we want the thumbnail to look like. To make the planning much easier, we can use some general rules of composition to help us out. Some of the main rules that I consider when creating my own thumbnails are the rule of thirds, leading lines, the golden ratio, diagonals, and dynamic angles. I won't explain each of these in detail, but I highly encourage you to do some research of your own. For this particular thumbnail, I want to have the camera low to the ground in order to create a dynamic angle. I want to have one car on the ground placed in the lower right third, and a second car in the air using the rule of diagonals. With our idea planned out, it's time to start gathering our material. First, we have to change our video settings in Rocket League. These are the settings that I use to take screenshots. We also need to decide what cars and maps we want to have in our thumbnail. For this one, I will have a plain red Octane, a plain red Dominus, and I will use the map Champions Field. Now that we've loaded into our private match, it's time to align our car. One key detail that you need to keep in mind is the lighting of the map. We don't want our car to be backlit. We can ensure that by looking at the shadow on the ground and making sure that it's placed behind our car. Once we're happy with the position of the car, we can go ahead and save the replay. We'll go ahead and do the same steps with the Dominus, but we'll also boost around the map a little bit just to gather some boost screenshots. This first screenshot is crucial because it's the foundation for how the rest of the thumbnail will lay out. I'll start by entering the fly mode in the replay and hiding the HUD. I'll fly the camera to the general position I would like and set my FOV to a medium amount so it's still dynamic but not too distorted. I'm going to take 3 separate screenshots of this scene. The first one will just be this normal one we have here. The second will be a green screen of just the car, and the third will be just the map. For the Dominus replay, I just need the green screenshot. To gather boost screenshots, just skim through your replay to where you have a consistent boost trail, line up your camera in a way that fits the cars, and simply set your green screen to black. With all of our screenshots gathered, it's time to start building the actual thumbnail. We'll start by making a 1920 by 1080 composition at 150 dots per inch. With our 3 main screenshots selected, we can transform them into the position we would like for our final thumbnail. We can then key out the green in the green screenshot by going to Select, Color Range, and selecting the green color, creating a mask, and inverting it. We'll also remove the greens from this screenshot using the hue saturation slider, as reflections from the green screen have cast a bit of a color on the Octane. Using the layer mask, we'll also paint away the bottom of the Octane so that it's still interactive with the grass again. We can use the plain background layer as a mask as well, and paint above where the wheels interact with the grass. We do this when we blur the background, we don't have any color leaks behind the car. We can now add in the Dominus and remove the green screen and green tones using the same steps as before. The last step of building the foundation is to add in the boost. By using the blend if sliders on our boost layer, we can remove the black whilst keeping the true colors and tones of the boost. We can then put them into place and apply any warps we may need to fill the scene. Hiding all layers but the background, we can begin to stylize the thumbnail. Using the polygonal lasso tool, we can select everything below the horizon of the grass. We'll then create a solid color using the selection and make it pure green. Set the colors layer blending mode to color to see the effect. We can then select the layer mask and paint away the parts of the car that we don't want to be affected by the color mask. For the sky, we'll create another solid color, this time with the color blue. We'll place this below the green solid and again paint away the area of the car. We'll place all of our background elements into a group as a backup. We'll duplicate the group and merge it into a single image. We can then go into the blur gallery and select the blur of our choice. For this thumbnail, I've used a tilt shift. The last step we'll do the background is to emphasize the lighting. To do this, I've created one positive exposure mask in the top left of the scene and one negative exposure mask in the bottom right. Using a positive exposure mask, you can paint over the headlights of the cars. Be sure to clip these to the cars themselves so that you don't affect the background. Above the exposure masks but not clipped to the cars, we can add a soft white brush, just add a bit of glow to the headlights. Lastly, we'll create an optical flare. You can do this by squishing a soft brush and duplicating it into an X shape, or you could simply download one off Google. The next light source we're going to tackle is the boost trail. We'll create a new layer and set the blending mode to linear dodge. Using a low flow brush, we're going to paint over the boost with a light orange color. Using the dodge and burn tool, we can start sculpting the light to our scene. This technique does come from a bit of practice to know exactly where you want the shadow and highlights to be. Since my primary light source is coming from the upper left, I'll start highlighting the parts of my car that are facing that direction by using the dodge tool. Using the burn tool, I can then start painting in the shadows in the areas that are less affected by the light source. And of course, I'll repeat these steps for the Dominus. Using a small brush, I'll use a high positive exposure mask to begin painting in the harsh highlights from the primary light source. Using a small light orange brush, I'll also paint in the highlights from the boost trail and set the blending mode to linear dodge. I'll go over it once again with a larger soft brush just to introduce some color casting. I will do that same painting technique, but this time with a color balance layer set to an orange tint to again add in some color casting from the boost. Lastly, I'll do one final low positive exposure mask over all the highlights. With a negative exposure mask, we will paint the lower parts of the car that is closest to the grass. We'll also target the background layer directly to add even more darkness to where the wheels and the grass connect. We'll also use a flattened brush on a negative exposure mask in order to introduce some cast shadows just below the Octane Dominus. We're also going to combat these shadows with a slight highlight from the Octane's headlights. If you're familiar with Lightroom, you're familiar with Camera Raw. Truthfully, I don't have a whole lot of strategy when it comes to creating a Camera Raw filter. I highly recommend just playing with the sliders to see what they do and adjusting accordingly. One thing that I do consistently do with my Camera Raw filters is incorporate some blues into the shadows along with some yellowish oranges into the highlights. Now, with all those steps out of the way, this is our final thumbnail. You can always expand these thumbnails further by adding in some nameplates, some text, some icons, or whatever you see fit, but the steps shown should allow you to have a baseline for any future thumbnails you're to create. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit from this, and I look forward to seeing some new thumbnails.